Welcome to the 10th episode of our podcast in the office of Aggregates Europe. My today's guest is Boris Erk. Boris is director of IUCN Europe and Central Asia, based in Bonn, Germany. He brings over 25 years of experience, including a decade in leadership roles. Since 2015, he has served as director of IUCN's regional office for Eastern Europe and Central Asia, expanding its scope from South and Eastern Europe to a dynamic program spanning the South Caucasus and Central Asia. With a background in environmental management, Boris has published on protected areas and transboundary conservation, and his experience lies in strategic planning, organizational development, and partnerships. Beyond his professional work, he enjoys cultural heritage, photography, cycling, and supporting grassroots initiatives. We're now in the office of Aggregates Europe in Brussels, which is the studio of our podcast series. Aggregates Europe is representing by far the largest non-energy extractive industry with members in 25 countries. The industry has 15,000 companies, mostly SMEs, operating 26,000 sites across Europe and producing around 3 billion tons of aggregates with a turnover of an estimated 30 billion euro. Welcome, Boris. It's an honor to have you today in our studio.
Thanks a lot, and thanks a lot for having me. Great pleasure being here.
An hour. Europe is facing a geopolitical crisis, lots of tensions and trade conflicts, a war on the continent where the EU Green Deal is now embedded in the Clean Industrial Deal, where competitiveness and simplification is on top of the agenda. On 5th of June is signed a letter of intent with Aggregates Europe and the intention to step up the cooperation with the European aggregates industry. What strength do IUCN and Aggregates Europe each bring to this collaboration, and how can these strengths complement one another to deliver responsibility and responsibly sourced raw materials with a gain for biodiversity?
Well, first to say again, thanks a lot for this invitation, Dirk, and the whole Aggregates Europe. It's a great pleasure being here. We met at your premises on several occasions, but for the first time I'm here in this particular capacity. So I have to say that this is a real privilege for me to be here and represent IUCN, International Union for Conservation of Nature, in this discussion. I hear that this is the 10th a podcast that you are making, so you have a proven track record of having interesting guests and discussions. Indeed, we did sign the letter of intent in June this year in Krakow, which was a major step forward for us. Even so, I have to say to underline that this is not the first time that we see each other or that we discuss cooperation. IUCN and Aggregates Europe has been long friends, and Aggregates Europe was one of the first businesses or industry representatives to join at the time our Countdown 2010 initiative here in Brussels that was initiated by IUCN. Regional Office for Europe was one of the first industries to recognize the importance of bringing nature and business together, walking hand in hand. So there is a lot of significance now in this restating of our goodwill to cooperate and to enrich each other and to complement in the capacity that we already have. And speaking of which, what we can do, even individually, we are doing a lot. Aggregates industry, and as you said, numbers are really striking. In terms of how many businesses, 15,000 businesses and 26,000 quarries, that's a lot. So it's a great potential, and of course you're already significant experience in dealing with nature restoration, for example, circularity and other important topics for us are big step forward for IUCN. And then IUCN on its part brings a lot of know-how in terms of nature, biodiversity conservation, nature restoration, sustainability, and issues like that. So I think that together we can make good progress. And in particular, as you said, these are very particular times that we live in, as a globally speaking and at regional level. So there are lots of challenges that we are facing, but together I think that we can walk stronger.
Okay, great. I remember Sebastian Winkler in 2007, the Countdown 2010, and it was to halt the loss of biodiversity. Have we made a lot of progress since 2010? Have we managed to halt the loss of biodiversity?
If we speak about numbers, then IUCN is one of the organizations behind the state of nature and numbers and state of species and habitats. We keep seeing decline. So one of the key roles that IUCN has globally, in particular in Europe, is to publish the European Red List, and we still see biodiversity declining. So from that point of view, I can say that there is a lot of work to be done. And with that in mind, it gives even more importance for corporations like this, because the only way to achieve halting the loss of biodiversity and reversing the decline that we are facing today is to work together. So it is not just about nature conservation sector, it's not just about environment sector, it's about all hands on deck. And then industry is a very important, if not a key partner there.
Mm-hmm. Now we're talking about opportunities to accelerate positive change for biodiversity. Where do you see, and also with your background, where do you see the greatest challenges, but also here the greatest opportunities in the cooperation?
So one of the things that we would really like to get through somehow is that discussion on development, on long-term development, prosperity, and well-being. It's very much a discussion about nature. So these are not two opposite ends or two different sides of the same coin. It's pretty much the same thing. Yeah. So if you really want to achieve that long-term development goals, then we have to have nature on board. So that's the major shift that we would like to see, and that we definitely promote. And with this partnership that we have, when we see this a strong interest of the industry to join this effort and to contribute to it, then we feel encouraged that that we all stand better chances, because it's not really just about nature conservation. It's not just about the integrity of life on Earth, but it's also about all the support systems that enable us to move forward and to build our society into the future.
You mentioned the IUCN Red List. Are there any other sort of methodologies, tools, or conservation standards which IUCN could share and which might enhance the restoration practices already happening on aggregates extraction sites?
Certainly, and that's one of the values added of this cooperation. I already mentioned the aggregates industry has quite a lot of know-how, and restoration and rehabilitation of sites is part of your business cycle. So we have a lot of experience there. So what we are bringing a set of tools and methodologies that can support and enhance the effort that you are already making. I mentioned the European Red List, which is nested into the global Red List, or the Red List of threatened species. That is definitely one of the IUCN's flagships, knowledge flagships. And IUCN is known for knowledge and tools and standards, and that's what we are bringing to the table. So the Red List is one of them. But it's very, very dynamic landscape, nature conservation as well. So IUCN is now 78 years, and in those 78 years, its approaches to nature conservation has changed a great deal. And I can say that 20, 30 years ago, speaking about industries and nature conservation coming together to achieve common goals would be quite different. But we are there, and that's good. That's good news. And so IUCN keeps developing tools that are topical, that are pertinent. So one of the most recent was the global standard on nature-based solutions. So now nature-based solutions are all over the place, and many of your partners and many of people who we talk to and organizations are now quite aware of it. But 10 years ago was slightly different. So nature-based solutions, it's essentially a way of looking at nature that sits on environmental, economic, and social pillar, and then making some intervention in nature is with those three goals. So how to bring both a social, economic, and environmental benefits. So often it's simplified and people look at nature-based solutions as nature restoration. So nature restoration is part of it. Definitely is at the core of it, at the center of it. But nature-based solutions are really relying on nature to provide some solutions. So simple as that. To different types of challenges that we face in terms of water shortage or drought, water resilience, which is very, very topical in the EU context these days, or simply land degradation and food systems and climate change, health issues, and so. So basically, nature-based solutions try to cover all of that, and then to provide some ideas and solutions into how we manage nature, how we manage ecosystems, how we restore where it's degraded. But certainly the degradation is not the departure point for us, because what we promote is not to reach that point when we have to restore. And of course, that the aggregates by nature. That's how the industry works. Is that there is extraction, so then restoration comes into as part of restoration or part of that life cycle.
I remember the discussion was very much on ecosystem services, nature-based solution part of it, or is it something similar?
Yes, and then there is a ecosystem-based approach. So we understand. We are also a little bit in simplification, if you ask, because we also try to first align, definitely, then to be able to get across that terminology, but also a little bit to simplify and not
very
to make it
the trend.
Exactly. Yeah. So we know that, and of course that we are fully aware of that. So this is not to complicate too much, really, nature-based solutions. And then for the first time, in many different terminologies, we saw that nature-based solutions is something that very easily and quickly resonates with people, which has its good pros and cons. And so, of course, as always. So the good thing is that people get interested and that they're open to listening and understanding what nature-based solutions are. But then a little bit of the downside there is that one would tend to call everything a nature-based solution. So we also have to be a little bit careful what we call nature-based solutions. Mm-hmm. It's not just imitating nature or doing some sort of nature type of design. So it's really using nature as a solution to all these challenges or to all these issues that we are facing this day. So it is it's a smartly designed project based on nature that brings into either better management or more integrated management that supports ecosystem services, or really a restore where land and water is being degraded.
Okay. You mentioned simplification is very much the trend also in the industrial deal, the Commission with the omnibus initiatives having a more competitive industry. Now, in the geopolitical context, which I mentioned at the introduction, how can we mobilize support for ecosystems, nature-based solutions, and for more restoration and biodiversity, halting the loss of biodiversity in these days?
Certainly. So in that equation, biodiversity is that web of nature, and then biodiversity coming together then creates different habitats, and then habitats are those, or ecosystems that are providing services to us that are food and water and air, and all the material what we use basically comes from nature. So once we understand that, then we can get into more detail, and we can move forward with that discussion.
That's creating the business case, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So without it, it's very difficult. But we see much more understanding in that regard. So now, how to turn that understanding into practice? That's a different story. So what we are seeing now, it's simplification, which, if it is to reduce some administrative burden, that's something that we can understand, and we see that. So a little bit of administration bureaucracy taking over in our organization as well. So we also try to be on track there. But that definitely, simplification does not mean a deregulation. So we really have to be quite clear on that there are some a premises, there are some preconditions there, and then one would be definitely to have nature on board. There are many ways of doing it, of course. So one is to stimulate and to promote nature positive activities. That can be in the aggregates industry, can be in other industries. That is really to champion those who are integrating more nature friendly measures into their activities that impact nature. And so there are different ways. There is, of course, to look into the whole issue of subsidies, for example, also to reduce subsidies that are that have a negative impact on nature and incentivize those actions that have positive effect overall.
Okay. Now we have a European Union nature restoration law in place. Member states are currently preparing national restoration plans. How can the cooperation and the letter of intent we signed, how can that cooperation help member states to reach their national targets?
Nature restoration regulation is a very important. We'd say that is it is a milestone achievement. So we really have to celebrate that. And this said, of course, that nature restoration regulation being adopted was a long journey. It wasn't an easy journey, and we do understand that there is a complexity with it, and that stands for developing national restoration plans that IUCN is very much supporting, to turning them into providing financing and turning them into meaningful action. So we understand that, but it is very new regulation for such in the world, especially at regional level. And we hope that we will see some spillover in other regions as well, because it was very much needed. We reached that point where land and water has become too degraded in order to keep sustaining our economic development. And this is not about nature as a biodiversity or nature conservation organization would promote having values per se. They do, of course, but this is really something that is very much tied into our day-to-day life and basically our economies down the line. So that restoration point has been reached, and therefore nature restoration regulation is extremely important. So now IUCN is supporting. We started with few countries, few EU member states. We started with France. France was a pioneer in that. Now we continue with several other member states, where we then work with government and stakeholders in building or supporting parts of their national restoration plans. And of course, there are different approaches. We work with few member states, and of course, there are activities all across the European Union. What matters in all these different efforts is that it's an open and transparent process that all key stakeholders, or as many stakeholders as possible, take part in it. And that's where Aggregates Europe come in. When it comes to national planning, of course, that you've been involved also in discussions around the very nature restoration regulation or law at the time, and you also expressed interest to be part of it. And there is no healthy restoration regulation or its rollout without aggregates or other industries that are basically a key parts of it.
Great, yeah. Now, if you had to name one transformative environmental benefit for the partnership of IUCN and Aggregates Europe, which you could deliver in the next 5 years, what would that be?
What we would really like to see is that extraction footprint turning into a nature or biodiversity asset. So that's something that there are many positive examples of your partners, your constituents, that many 15,000 SMEs, and that's massive foundation. We know, of course, of a number of good examples. What we believe that together we can achieve is bring it to the next level, because you're already doing restoration. So with IUCN, we can do it in a richer, in a more a comprehensive way, where IUCN can come in with tools that are either red list of species, advising on particular species, or applying nature-based solutions and different methodologies there into how to do, for example, a particular restoration, how to engage with local constituents, how to come up with a solution that works for all. There are many others like STAR and species threat abatement and restoration tool that also advises in a very concrete terms in physical space and time, advises what kind of impact your intervention may have. And just thinking, for example, and that's where what nature-based solutions stand for, just thinking if you have to do restoration, and it's a core restoration, so just think of the local community, and there are many good examples already there. Think of the local community, think of the ecosystem services, think of biodiversity benefits, and that's where IUCN with its, now we are 16,000 experts worldwide, where we can come in with methodologies and particular advice on how to do that, and that, for example, restoration, that to serve a local community, to also to provide some economic benefits, and definitely to support social cohesion. So basically for us in the next 5 years is really to, as much as possible, to have you on board on this journey. That is not an easy one, I have to say. I'm 20 years with IUCN now, and in nature conservation is not an easy one. We still have to cross many rivers, as one song said once. There is still a lot to work on in terms of people's understanding why nature is really important, but now that we also have formalized this into this letter of intent, I think that we can really turn that into a very, very strong and positive asset. And if I may also to say that we, as every 4 years that IUCN is organizing a World Conservation Congress, where all our constituents, members and partners from states to indigenous peoples organizations, including partners and business partners, are getting together to try somehow to work out some of these solutions and answer some of the challenges. I'm very happy that this year we'll also have Aggregates Europe on board, and we will engage in interesting discussions. There might be a little bit of challenge, but that's basically what we are aiming for. As we said, we also we'd like to look a little bit into disruptions. Yeah, so how to enable transformations to happen, and we know that we have to do that.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for the invitation to the World Congress, and it's the 10th October in...
Our particular event will be on 10th October that brings together circular economy, good business practices into nature positive. So our particular event is on the 10th of October, and the Congress as such will run from 9th to 15th of October with 3-4 really extremely dynamic days with hundreds of events and thousands of participants from different tents coming together to discuss those critical issues for this planet, but also for us.
Looking forward to that event.
Yeah, thanks a lot for accepting our invite.
Absolutely, with great pleasure. Boris, thank you very much for being here today. That was the 10th episode of our podcast of Aggregates Europe. Stay tuned for the next one. Thank you.